Sexy people of the internet. It is Dave. It's your boy Duncan, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. For this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Australian death metal project AGLO. The band's new album, Build Fear, will be released on November 10th via Brilliant Emperor Records. So, let's go back about a month or so. And
I thought you were going to go a month's fine. My brain can almost comprehend that. Anything further back than that is that's a chalkboard that has been wiped, Dave. There ain't no content on that bitch.
Okay. I was on the old Bandcamp about a month ago.
When you have time in between, like a month ago, the busiest month for music this year, and Dave's perusing Bandcamp. This is going to drive me up the wall.
I find that there's a lot of stuff appears on Bandcamp that doesn't appear on digital streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music and stuff. So I have a little peruse of Bandcamp every now and again just to find the good stuff, And I was flicking through their kind of new death metal releases, and I clicked play on a track by a band called AGLO. The track was called Last Rites. Turns out it was the first track on the new album. And all it took, Duncan, was one hit of that snare drum. And it had me sitting to attention. I was then on the hunt for said album from that moment on, so we could check it out and then we would review it. And then some interesting facts came to light, Duncan. You know how I like a fact or two.
Dave loves, for the listeners behind the curtain and for any aspiring PR company or band that are thinking about submitting things in, facts, interesting facts.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're actually not a psychotherapist in your spare time. Lie, because that'll get you through Davey's firewall. Just put keywords like cowbell, trash can snare, fucks like a horse. Dave will be in on that.
I love keywords, Duncan. I love keywords. Press releases with keywords have me in, and this one had all the keywords. So firstly,
did it have COVID in it? Because that's the one that doesn't get through the firewall for Duncan at the moment. I'm like, COVID.
I don't think I mentioned COVID. I remember there's maybe a mention of illness, but I don't think it was COVID. But anyway,
well, that's fine. You are safe on this side of the firewall. You've been accepted into the pen.
Yeah. First fact, one guy. This is one guy.
Actually, I had a suspicion.
Oh, so, did you know?
Yeah, I did. There's something about we'll get to it. But I had a suspicion that this felt like one or two piece.
Yeah. So Aaron Osborne is the main man behind it all.
Osborne is also it makes him sound like a fucking like a Marvel hero. Aaron Osborne, death metal guy. Superpower, he builds fear.
Yes, he does.
You can have that, Aaron. That's yours, buddy.
He also writes and records all instruments except for drums, which are recorded by one Colin Young, drummer of Dead Body, God's Hate, and vocalist for Twitching Tongues. And then I'm like, that's a cool link up. Australian one-man band beats Colin Young from, said bands.
Although when you say Australian one-man band, I do picture him with a harmonica, a guitar, fucking cymbals above his head attached to his arms, a big fucking bass drum on his back, fucking an accordion in between his legs. Fucking come on.
And then I see the album is recorded and mixed by Taylor Young at the Pit Recording Studio. Okay.
All coming together.
Let's see how this is all linking up. It was also produced by Taylor Young and by Aaron Osborne. Then the album, and I should have fucking known this, Duncan, mastered by Brad Boatwright.
Brad, you have been holding out on us and putting things Brad. We asked you for one thing, Brad. One thing. By the way, Brad, we love you. We asked you for one thing, and that is that you give us a heads up on this shit.
Brad,
This straight to Bandcamp nonsense won't fly with me, right?
I've got to go through.
You're in danger of having one of the 85 "We love you, Brad" boat rights being taken off you, and then we'll give you it right back because I feel guilty. But
you're lucky I read the press releases, Brad. You're lucky.
Yep. Keyword Brad boat right.
So
also boat right and Brad, like all individuals.
So straight away I'm like, fuck's sake, this is like ticking all the boxes. And then just to top it off, a wee Taylor Young, Brad Boatwright, fucking duo just sexying it up on this album. Just, you know, this is slippery when wet, Duncan. So, Captain's Log, stardate 47634.44.
Please tell me this is in the press statement, because you don't watch Star Trek, and I honestly, my dick has never went from flaccid to hard as quick. Like, just when I didn't think, just when I managed to compose myself to the point that I don't molest you every time I see you, like, you just started like speaking the sexiest language of all languages, which is Star Trek.
Foreplay.
I had no girlfriend at 16, but I did have a Klingon dictionary, and I'll tell you right now, I regret nothing. I regret fucking nothing. Kapla?
Yeah.
Kapla. There you go.
This is all starting to make sense. After a difficult period of illness and a scarcity of recorded music, a peculiar entity has emerged from the heart of a dying star in a nearby cluster of planets. The crew has aptly named this enigmatic monolith AGLO. It has taken on the form of down-tuned guitars, slow hooks, and death metal sensibilities, infecting all who come into contact with its ravenous power. Upon conducting communications diagnostics, it has been discovered that the latest audible horror, known as Build Fear. Finally, this log entry should serve as a warning to all who encounter this beast. Prepare yourselves, as the drive to worship at the altar of the almighty riff is strong, and resistance may prove futile.
It's a wee bit Borgin at there in the end. Oh, what?
So,
wasn't ready for this. I don't read the press statement. I should put that up front for anyone new to the videos. Duncan never reads the press statements. I'm always like you guys, finding out the information from the knowledge teat that is Dave. We'll collectively suckle on it. Don't know where we're going with this. It's all wrong.
So,
obviously
the snare piqued my interest. That was like the initial, like, okay.
I mean, this snare's cool.
You're
it's
talking
a Davey snare.
my
right?
language
the Davey
now.
Snare. And like,
snare is my language.
Right, listen, I was about 30 seconds into this, and I was like, it's like someone slowed down Sanguisugabog, and that was all I needed. That was me in, right?
Yep. So what about the rest of this album? What
about the rest, Dave?
Well, the rest of this album, it fucks, Duncan. It absolutely fucks. If you've been enjoying this year,
not like Duncan at 16.
Absolutely not. The opposite.
Klingon dictionary, Dave.
The opposite of Duncan.
All my cool friends had them.
If you've been enjoying this crushing year of death metal, then stop what you're doing and add this album to your ever-growing list of death metal albums in 2023. This is, well, let me start off with saying this isn't a kind of like frantic kind of rip your dick off type death metal album.
Rip your dip. Hashtag rip the dip.
Rip your dip off. This is a much slower variety of death metal.
Yeah, it has a kind of almost a sludgy sensibility about it, which
100%.
I kind of adore.
What I was thinking was, like, if Crowbar made a death metal album, this is kind of...
Yeah, pretty much.
It sits within that, like, mid-pace, chunky thickness. There's a bit of the classics in there. You've got a bit of the, like, Entombed in there, or the kind of, a little bit of Morbid Angel, but there is a kind of streak of something newer, like you say, that's like that kind of Sanguisugabog, Tribal Gaze, Burial Pit, even like kind of that type of thing. I think
it's like there is a a production that is working its way around all the cool kids out there, which I kind of fucking love, where it's like room. It's like room set. Well, let's just fling room on it. That works really, really well with this style of music. Like really, really, really well.
Yeah.
I kind of empty church hall sort of sound, which it just like everything has resonance. Like every drum hit rings out like a half a second longer than it probably should. Every vocal line sounds like it's sung into a giant cone. And the guitar's just like, if you look at the guitar, it's going to go shun. You don't even need to hit the string. That's like, and I kind of like those bands that you mentioned, aforementioned death metal bands, are all kind of employing that. And I think it's just making their sound better, for lack of a better term. And it's all over this. Like the second track has cowbell, and the cowbell sounds like it's been recorded independent of the whole band in like its own church hall. This is the cowbell's church hall. Fucking dung, dung, dung. It's just fucking amazing. And it adds so much character and depth to every track, every single, even those moments that go a bit more sludgy, you know, where you get a bit more of the kind of lead work and stuff like that. Huge.
Yeah, although the death metal is the kind of main ingredient, it is also peppered with that kind of like doom and sludge, and I think that kind of that medley of styles is what really kind of attracted me to this as it kind of went on. I love doom and sludge, so to hear this kind of like thick death metal sound mixed in with a bit of that kind of really ticked all the boxes for me. And every track just has like a rhythm that you can't help but just kind of sway along to. It never really moves at any like much speed at all. But that extremely kind of gargantuan power just kind of drags you along with it, whether you like it or not. It's incredibly nasty sounding, like in the best possible way. The kind of corrosive, kind of sludgy texture in the guitars, to the kind of the real kind of dirty feel in the production, it just sticks to you and will not wash off. Weirdly, as kind of straightforward as this is, the more I went back to it, the more I kind of heard from it. My first listen was very much a kind of like just one long stank face, like that was just the whole kind of album. So much so my work colleagues just started calling me Stank Face Dave, just because my face was like that every single day.
We were joking before we recorded this that maybe we should just do Leonardo DiCaprio's face from The Killers of the Flower Moon, and to be honest, that is Stank Face. So we could have just got through the whole review doing it. So,
but I think like my second listen and my third listen, I started to kind of find more nuances in it. You'll start to hear little bits of melody and tracks like Regression, where it gets a kind of touch more atmospheric, a little bit more open in the guitar sound. Or there's little bits of a kind of death doom kind of lead work, and Relativity Undone, and Into the Maze. But what I kind of noticed was that each track gives you kind of more the more you get into it. The first kind of 2-3 minutes of each track very much kind of sets the tone, just kind of gets things moving with a really kind of cool groove, something to hook you straight in, and it'll repeat 2 or 3 times, and then the switch ups kind of happen after that. Usually a change in tempo to a certain extent, usually with a new riff, and then that'll then change again to finish the song off in that kind of like devastating fashion. And it flows very well. Like that kind of formula works perfectly on the album. Those kind of separate parts are all woven together really well, and you can tell, like, even though this is like a kind of one-man kind of project, you can tell he has experience from other bands. It doesn't sound like his first attempt at this, to be honest. The kind of transitions are kind of executed very well, and always leading to something that almost outdoes what kind of came before. So I kind of felt like I always got a sense of satisfaction from as each kind of track ends. And the riffs on this are killer, like big bendy riffs, very dissonant, really crushing sounding. Storm of Fears is just like all killer, no filler, huge riffs, massive grooves from Colin Young on drums. Also some really nice kind of sci-fi samples interlaced through it as well. Warhead as well gets a little bit more kind of thunderous with the kind of double bass drums from Colin Young. But that there's a big kind of sliding riff that it ends with was just like, that's the icing on the cake for that. And And the actual the end of that track, when it does the kind of sliding riff, and I started to notice it more throughout the album and on each listen. I was like, oh right, okay, there's a little bit of a slide on Last Rites as well, right on the first track as well. And then obviously you mentioned you've got that fucking cowbell in there, which when you add cowbell to a death metal album, it instantly just warms my wee cold dark heart, to be honest.
Yeah.
Just
it's almost worthy of another star. Here's your cowbell star.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Vocally, it kind of sits within a very guttural style for the album's entirety, really. Some might find that repetitive, but it's a death metal album at the end of the day, and a lot of the bands within this particular kind of style of the genre do have that similar kind of style. They don't.
I feel like complaining that an emo band sounds whiny. It's a characteristic of the music, so I can get over it.
Yeah. I think AGLO get away with it on this album, to be honest. It works for this kind of like slow, sludgy death metal style. And the album is only like 36 minutes long, so it's not an overly long album. I think had this been any longer, then you might find it would start to feel a little bit samey. Same goes for the music. I think Aaron's timed this album very well. I think if it went any longer, you might start to feel like it was kind of retreading similar sounds that you'd heard previously. As I mentioned at the start, I think one of the highlights for me on this is the production by Taylor and Brad Boatwright. I think that kind of makes it for me. Without that density and the kind of the tones that they've caught by Taylor during the recording, I don't know this would have landed as well as it does. I certainly don't think it would have grabbed me as instantly as it did when I clicked play on Bandcamp, to be honest. So I think this definitely adds to that kind of sonic assault from the album. Lastly for me, I love the artwork by Tom Sweetman. Would 100% wear that on a t-shirt. Just saying.
Yeah, it does have, like now it does have, out with the death metal logo, the font for the album artwork, and the rest of it does have a very science fiction feel. So it does kind of fit in with the press statement, which I hadn't realised before.
Yeah. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's good old stank-faced death metal. Can't go wrong. Loved it. Duncan, what are you thinking?
Yeah, this is my pace of death metal. Yeah. I'm getting a lot of it this year, and I'm very, very, very happy. There's people out there talking about this being the year of death metal, and it is. Right, so like there's plenty of other genres stepping their game up, but I don't think we've experienced a year consistently where almost every single month has had a top tier death metal album like 2023 has. And some months we've had more than one, like 4 or 5. I'm looking at you, September. This is, like I said before, it kind of reminded me of a lot of the work that the guys in Sugabog are up to out there doing their thing. But this one's a bit more serious, much more deliberate in terms of its pacing. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. I'll describe it slightly different. I think this is just full of character. I get that. And it's all on the guitar work. It's all those things where an extra note's added in, or there's a like a variance on something. And a lot of the lead work, especially when you're listening to tracks like Regression, Relatively Undone, and Shame as a Weapon, where that really starts to come through. Even the closing track, Into the Maze, takes things in a different direction, which I really enjoy. But I love the fact that for every one it gives you of that, you have a Last Rites, a Storm of Fears, and by God, Warhead, which just has like the one of the best. Just I'm going to slow headbang. That really like bow doo 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 doo. You're just like fuck's sake, and it's just crushingly slow and deliberate. Vocally, it was the vocals that actually made me think that it was a guitarist vocalist, and maybe this was the smaller band setup than most. The vocals come in where I imagine, I don't think he was a vocalist first, I think he was a guitarist first. Like the vocal patterns fall in line with where I imagine someone writing riffs would put vocals, and that is not a slight on it, but you're not getting anything that runs too against a rhythm. it all pretty much follows to a rhythm. So if you listen to like a band like Archspire, for example, very, very, very playful in the rhythms of the vocals, but he ain't playing anything.
Yeah.
So like he can do that. On this one, it follows very much in with the guitar work, and that's usually an indicator that the front man is also playing an instrument. So that kind of stood out to me. And because the bass work on here doesn't go off in any weird directions, I actually thought it was doubled up by the same guy. So I'm feeling a bit smug about myself.
Oh, yeah.
Look at me go all fucking detective. Detective McLeish. Yeah, solve the case. Book him, Dano. But yeah, this is a surprisingly easy listen.
Yeah.
Crushingly, I say the same thing about Sango Sugabog. It is a surprisingly easy listen, considering it is a death metal album at its core, and it's crushingly heavy.
Yeah.
You just sink into this one. It just plays with your brain in a good way. It never really elevates much of any pace at all, but I actually think that's what makes it memorable. I can count on my hands, both my hands together, in the last 45 days how many death metal albums are like just out there doing blast beats. I like bands that sometimes go, you know what, there's plenty of bands out there doing. I'm sure I read a comment somewhere. I shouldn't do these things, but I read a comment where we reviewed Cannibal Corpse, and someone was moaning that they're not as fast as they used to be. And I think the album they mentioned was 25 years old, right? Which to me is like, the drummer is now 25 years older. Like, let's see you run for 60 seconds as fast as you did 25 years ago. And we'll just see if you're just like that. Like, there's a certain drop off. The fact that they can do that is remarkable, but the fact that that's in the conversation is a slight against a band is always worrying to me. Bands that exist in the doomy sludgy realm never have that conversation. There's no one saying, well, it's not as slow as it used to be. You know what I mean? No one's ever doing that. The pacing works really, really well here. It adds a lot of character, allows the guitar work to be much more playful and much more spacious. That lead work wouldn't be as interesting if it was under thunderous blast beats.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is like a great collection of 7 fucking slamming tracks from an artist we didn't know about, who's now on the radar. And yeah, Brad, next time, we heads up. That's all we're asking for. Production is mint.
Yep.
It's absolute. This is the, like, to me, this is the sound of death metal. Some people may argue and say it should be pristine, and I would say no. This is the sound of death metal. This is how I like my death metal. More of this, please. Yeah, thought this was brilliant.
Nice. Okay, so scores for the new album from AGLO. Yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a kind of easy 4 out of 5 for me. Hits hard, killer production, very satisfying listen, and it's got cowbell. 4 out of 5. Duncan?
I'm the same as you. This is like, it's up. We are spoiled. It's an embarrassment of riches in the death metal genre at the moment. In a year where I hadn't heard like some of arguably the best death metal I've heard in the last 20 years, this may have edged up an extra 0.5. But those are bands with 5 members in the best studios in the world recording like anticipated albums. Here's this cunt out there in Australia where there's like 10 of the deadliest fucking creatures on the planet just coming up through your toilet to gnaw on you. And he's writing this shit.
Yeah.
Fucking fair play to him. 4 out of 5.
Yep. Nice. Okay, so a new album from AGLO, Build Fear, out on November 10th on Brilliant Emperor Records. Links below to the band, to the pre-order. Check it out. Let us know what you think. Happy to hear your thoughts on it. That is the review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.